Hey guys, good evening. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. We will wait a little bit for folks to come on. Hey Noeline, thank you for coming on. Again, I apologize. Hi Wasella, thanks for watching. Thanks for coming on. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Tonight's topic is very interesting, and I hope that many will join us. I know tonight is a special night for lovebirds, and people all over are celebrating. And I thought it very wise to speak about this topic tonight because there are many others that will be affected by this situation tonight as we speak. So I felt that it was kind of important to bring some highlight on sexual assault and sexual harassment. And so I will begin because we're a little late because I started on my other live video, my Facebook live. So please share the video. Please like the video. Please invite folks to watch the video. Sexual assault, sexual harassment. Sexual assault can happen to anybody. Sexual assault can happen to anyone regardless of their sexual orientation, their status, their gender, their social economical status. As parents, guardians, loved ones, it is kind of difficult and overwhelming for us to learn that our loved ones have been sexually assaulted. For us to learn that our loved ones have been raped, they have been molested. It's difficult for you to know how you are going to react in situations like that. How do you respond? What do you say? Many sexual assault victims usually respond with shame, fear, anxiety, hurt, aggression, and depression. So tonight we will be diving into the topic of why victims do not come forward. Why sexual assault victims do not come forward. Again, please share the video. Please like the video. I see that a lot of folks are not tuned in here. I had a few folks on the other page and I lost them when I came on and I switched over to my friendly counselor live. I was on my Quita page regular live and I had to switch it over because I got feedback that people were not seeing it. So please share the video. Please like the video. I have a little story that I want to share with you all when it comes to sexual assault and being bystanders, and my family knows this story. Those friends that are very close to me, they know this story. So I will begin with the story. When I was probably about maybe seven or 8 years old in Liberia, and I had this neighbor who we used to play. She was a playmate. We used to play together. And they live in the back of us, where our house is. They live in the back of us. And so I used to, play with her every time. And so we went ahead and, we would play. And after that, she would go home. But she lived with her mom and her, I believe, stepdad, who happens to be a herbalist. And he will send her all the time to buy something we call palm wine in Liberia. And so every time she would go and buy the palm wine, I would stop her and try to talk to her and try, to have a conversation with her. And so, but I noticed, she was the only one that would go and buy the palm wine. And Every time she bought the palm wine, she will meet this man who was in his probably 50s or 60s. She was my age. She will meet him behind the house. And I observed that. I was curious why he will always meet her behind the house. And so I asked her, one day I said, is there anybody else that this man sends to buy palm wine? And she said, no, I'm the only one he sends to buy palm wine. I said, okay. So I started to pay attention. So I watched her. But it was something different about her. She was very timid. She was very subdued. And I wanted to know why. She won't play with us. She was very shy. So I asked her, I said, what do you do behind the house out of curiosity? What do you do behind the house? She looked at me as if I said something and I knew something. So I said, what do you do behind the house? When this man take you behind the house, what do you do? And she said nothing. But the way that she said nothing, I felt like something was wrong. So I paid more attention and I started asking more questions. Well, this one day, I kind of followed her and I observed her and she wasn't really herself. So I asked her, I said, does this man touch you? And I started to point to her body parts. I said, hey, Sarah, how are you? Thanks for joining in. Hi, Eileen. Thanks for joining in. And I said to her, did he touch you anywhere on your body parts? And she said, no. But the way that she said no, I knew, that something was happening. Now, remember, I was only about 7 years old. In my 7-year-old mind, I knew something was wrong and I knew that I needed to investigate more. So I did. I told my brother, I just guessed. I told him, I said, I think that old man is molesting my friend. He said, how do you know? I said, something she told me that I think is true. So we decided that day that we were going to go to confront him. So me, my brother, my sisters, we went to the next door neighbor's house and we started to bang on the door. At age 7, I didn't even realize that I was an advocate. I was. I went over to her and I told her, I said, where does this man touch you? I need you to tell me. She said, he didn't touch me. I said, he touched you. Where did he touch you? You need to tell me where he touched you. She won't say anything. So we went over to his door and we started banging on his door. And we started to tell him, we know that you molest children around here. You need to get outside. Now, Liberia and the culture, you have to understand, children are not that daring to speak to any adult about any issues of sexual rape, anything like that. But for some reason, I was a fearless little child. And I went out there with my brother and I took on this whole matter into my hands and we started banging on that door. And this man got so afraid and I started saying, I said, don't you think I know? I know. The girl told me everything that you did. I said, she told me that you touched her in her private. And he said, oh my goodness, what is this child talking? I said, it's true. So at this point, all of the neighbors started to come around. Everybody started to come around and the girl came outside. And so I said to her, where did he touch you? Tell me, where did he touch you? And I said, did he touch you here? She said, no. I said, did he touch you here? She said, no. And then I pointed to her genitals. I said, did he touch you there? She said, yes, he touched me there. And I said, I knew he hurt you. I knew that he touched you there. And all of the neighbors, everybody in the neighborhood turned on this man, and it was something big. Sexual harassment, guys, happens to anybody, regardless of the age, regardless of the gender, regardless of your social economic status. So why don't victims come forward? Victims that have been sexually molested or assaulted, harassed, why don't they come forward? So based on my 10 plus years experience working with sexual assault victims and also, victims that have gone through trauma, whether it's rape, it's harassment, or any of the sort. There are a few things that they have shared with me that I will be sharing with you guys tonight. I just want us to get a little bit of psychology behind sexual harassment and sexual assault. I want us to be very clear when we're talking about the definition, that we know exactly what we are talking about. Sexual harassment behaviors can fall under many categories, including inappropriate touching, invasive privacy, sexual jokes, of course, inappropriate sexual jokes, sexual unwelcome sexual comments, unwelcome gestures, exposing of your body parts, of course, is unwelcome, bribery, and, requests for sex, sexual favoritism, receiving benefit for sexual assault. Now, I want us to be clear when it comes to the difference between sexual harassment and sexual assault. Sexual assault. Actually, what happens within sexual assault is when the perpetrator forces you to perform sexual favors. So they may penetrate the victim's body. This is also known as rape. Attempted rape. They may force them to perform sexual acts such as oral sex, or they may force them to perform anal sex, fondling, unwanted touching, sexual misconduct. All of this is used to describe what we call sexual assault. So sexual harassment can be something as simple as an inappropriate gesture. Maybe they may, pat you or rub you on your shoulder. They may touch your breast, your buttocks, say something about your body parts. When it comes to sexual assault, it's when they are actually, they have penetrated or they attempted rape. They force the victim to perform any kind of sexual favors on them. Why don't victims speak up? At the core of the reasons why victims don't speak up, the very first reason is shame. Shame is the primary reason why most women and men do not come forward to report sexual harassment or sexual assault. Shame is the number one reason why. Shame is at the core. It's an intense core emotion wounding many women and men. When you feel violated, when you feel defiled, it is humiliating, it is dehumanizing, it is difficult for you to come up and say, I have been molested, I have been assaulted. It's shame. Shame is a natural response. It's our body's natural response. However, whenever we feel helpless, we feel hopeless, we feel like we are at the mercy of other people. Sense of shame causes the victim to blame themselves for the sexual misconduct of the perpetrator. We see that there are many stories right now in the news about sexual assault victims that have waited for so many years to come forward. Women are told that it's their fault. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Why didn't you say anything about it? I have had clients who told me that they were so embarrassed to tell people why they were molested, why they were, assaulted, because they said, maybe I was just flirting with this person. I didn't think that they took it the wrong way. It was innocent. We were just playing around and I just felt like, I led them on to something. Clients saying that, it's my fault because I told them that I liked it when it started, but then I told them to stop and it did not stop. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. Shame can make you feel isolated. Shame can isolate you from the word. In fact, in primitive culture, shame can banish people, really. It makes you feel unwanted. It makes you feel broken. It makes you feel deeply sorrow for what has happened to you. So many women will not report sexual assault because of this feeling of shame. They find it easy to blame themselves because it's safer to blame yourself. It's safer to admit that, okay, I was the reason why this happened to me. Even today we find that victims make comments like, maybe if I didn't dress the way that I dress, it wouldn't have happened to me, or he would not have, came on to me like the way he did. And this happens, it's true, especially in our Liberian community, people of African descent. On the job, you are embarrassed because you have been harassed, because you felt like doing sexual favors will give you this promotion. And regardless of what you do, it's just a man or a woman who is taking out their sexual inappropriate behavior on you. We hear now, in high schools, in elementary schools, it's so common for boys to make inappropriate jokes about girls' sexual body parts. Joan just mentioned in Liberia. How dare you speak about it? So what? Everybody does it. It's something that we all do. You better sleep with that teacher to get that grade. That's how we do it. That is the norm. It is not the norm. Another reason why is denial, and people minimizing why it happened to them. So blaming yourself, feeling overwhelmed about shame really is humiliating, push you to a place where, you minimize the assault that has happened to you. Some clients had told me in the past, you know what? I have seen girls who have been raped, gang raped. I have seen girls who have been molested and have had to spend days in the hospital. So what if he touched my breast or he touched my butt? It's not a big deal. But then these same individuals come back and they're depressed. They cannot sleep. They cannot eat. They have anxiety. They have lost appetite because this thing is weighing them down. The fact that somebody violated their body, defied their body, dehumanized them as a person, made them feel less than a person, and they are going through what we call victim blaming, because everywhere in society, all you hear is it's the girl's fault because she wore a tight dress. It's the girl's fault because she wore inappropriate clothing, or she was flirting with this man. And, excuses are made for men inappropriate behavior. And so perpetrators feel like it's okay for them to do exactly that. Women also, I must say, we make excuses for our perpetrators. Well, you know what? He just did that. Maybe he didn't have sex with his wife or his girlfriend. He told me that he just needed to release himself, whatever the story may be, that you may make that excuse. Maybe I am the only one that he has done that to. He doesn't usually do that. How do you know? How do you know? Not until later, when other victims come forward, then they're able to be more adamant about the fact that, okay, maybe I'm not the only one that he has done this to. It's true that, the teachers, the parents, all of it. And we live in a culture, as I will speak later on, about what we call a rape culture, where it is so normalized for these type of things to happen. It is just Liberia, for example. It is so normalized for older men to rape and molest young girls, for teachers to sleep with their students to get a grade, for bosses to sleep with their employees just to get a raise. Number three is fear of consequences. Many victims do not speak up because they are afraid. They are afraid of what repercussions will happen to them. They're afraid that if they disclose something, first of all, people will not believe them. They may tarnish their character. People may see them as troublemaker. They may be afraid that they may not be able to get the grades. Maybe if you're in school and you have been promised that grade, and you tell that maybe you were raped or molested, you will not get that grade. You will not get that pay raise. But then you will be labeled as a troublemaker. So they are afraid for their own safety. They are afraid for their own well-being. As a result, they do not speak up. They do not say anything about what is happening around them. So then you have, people that are afraid. They are living in all this hurt and pain, but they cannot speak about what is happening. Because they have been scrutinized and they are exhausted about talking about it. There are some victims who do not speak because of low self-esteem. Now, this is very true, especially for victims who have been raped, molested, assaulted in the past. Because nothing happened before, they're kind of reluctant to come forward. So if I was molested in the past, if I was assaulted in the past, and I told a family member, I told a parent, depending on the way that they responded to me, I will more than likely be hesitant to speak about future rape, future assault. So because of low self-esteem, I have had clients say to me, I didn't think that it was a big deal because when I was about 8, 9 years old, my father molested me or my uncle raped me. So it meant nothing for me to go out to a party and to take drugs and to take alcohol and to let multiple partners, multiple men sleep with me. It wasn't a big deal because I felt like, my body really has been abused already. So what will just one more do to me? And then they try bigger drugs, cocaine, ecstasy. You hear about the sex drugs. They go to party, they get anything to make them feel numb so that they are not able to justify what they're doing rationally. Little by little, the more that we disrespect our body as women, the more that we allow it to happen, the more that you give your body away, you lose your integrity, you lose your womanhood, and it becomes something you don't care about yourself. You just stop caring about who you are as a person. That is the perfect opportunity for a perpetrator to take advantage of you. The minute they come close to you and sense that you have low self-esteem, that is a gateway for them to come right into you. And they will come with all of these gifts and everything else that they can start with, making you to believe that they care. And that's all that they need. So, we talk about fear being number 4. Even the most confident girl, after a while, after she has heard many, many, many stories of her body, whether she's pretty, whether she's ugly, society has made it in a way that we depend on men to validate who we are is wrong. You are beautiful. That's why I played that song. No matter what they say, you do not need a man or a woman to validate you. These perpetrators preyed on vulnerability. They wait for meetings where you are vulnerable and then they attack. They attack you. They will attack you, and before you know it, you are in a situation. Research has shown that people who have gone through assault and rape, they find themselves in a state of hopelessness and helplessness. There's something in psychology we call learned helplessness. And it's a way that after you have been in situations for so long that you feel there is no way out, you gave up. You learn to be helpless. You learn to be depressed. You learn to be helpless. And you stay in that situation feeling there is no way out. So this notion of learned helplessness cause is the underlying causes of depression. And we find that many people who have been raped, molested, this is what happens to them. They become hopeless. They become helpless. They feel like, there is no end to their situation. Why come forward? Nothing will change. If I even tell people that I was raped or molested, they will blame me, because society always blame women, right? As I mentioned above, is that overwhelmed self-blame, that intense self of shame, that is that underlying core emotion that drives us to self-blame. Folks that have history of being sexually violated, of course, they will be hesitant to come forward. They will be hesitant to come forward because, again, it goes back to the fact that who will believe you, especially if you have suffered trauma from childhood, if you have been molested, if you have been harassed, if you have been sexually assaulted. In your adulthood, you will be more reluctant to speak forward. There's a research that shows that 38% of college-age women have been sexually violated and have been victimized prior to college. That's a huge amount, guys. And of this amount, 2 to 3% reported. So it seems like there is a huge amount of underreported cases that goes on year by year, day by day. There are so many underreported cases now. Imagine if adults, we don't report it. What about children? It's even more when it comes to children. Lack of information. People just do not know what sexual harassment is, what sexual assault is. We don't have this conversation with our children. We do not have this conversation in schools. We do not have these conversations in churches. So as a result, it takes something drastic as rape, to tear a family apart, to make people more self-aware that, okay, maybe sexual harassment started prior to this. Let's go back. Most victims, when they share their stories, they always did it back to the very first time they were sexually assaulted. And it could be something as somebody inappropriately touched their breast or touched their butt, or maybe forced them to perform sexual favors. Maybe it was oral sex. Maybe it was sending sexual explosive pictures to them. Whatever the case may be, they track back to since that time. And, they can think, oh my goodness, so this started. This was when I started to have a low self-esteem of myself. I allowed myself to let go. And this is when I can trace all of these things back. Guys, there are a lot of highly educated women who do not know about sexual harassment, who do not know about the definition of sexual harassment. They do not recognize sexual harassment. And so as a result, they do not report it. They do not report it because they do not know, the extent to what it is. Underneath the core of all of this is consequences that arises from sexual harassment, sexual assault, anxiety, low self-esteem, PTSD, suicidal behaviors. There are many people who, of course, when you have been dehumanized and you have been put in a predicament where you do not feel that you are worth anything, you start to have suicidal ideations. Many sexual assault victims, actually studies show that 15 of 1,000 females reported that they had suicidal thoughts because of sexual assault. Finally, we find that, some people are drugged. We've heard the story with Bill Cosby, that sometimes you go to parties, you're invited to parties, and you don't know what happened. And so you are kind of hesitant to go back to your story because you were under the influence, but something happened. And you know that while you were under the influence, something happened that was not right. And so you don't think that your story will be credible. If you tell the story What will others say? Will they say that, well, you were drunk, you don't remember what happened? Most of the times, women and men will shy away from telling their stories because of situations like that. So I wanted to give definitions of sexual harassment. Again, any actual or attempted rape or sexual assault, unwanted pressure for sexual favors, unwanted deliberate touching, leaning over, cornering, pinching, unwanted sexual looks or gestures, unwanted letters, telephone calls, materials, anything that is sexual in nature. Examples referring to adults as girls. Don't call me girl, call me by my name. Doll, honey, hung. Making sexual comments about somebody's body part. Girl, you got some nice ass. No, I'm sorry. Come again. Okay. Talking about your breasts. Talking about sexual topics. Talking about sexual topics that you did not invite, asking for sexual fantasies, preferences, history of when you became sexually active, turning work discussions into sexual topics. All of these, guys, are forms of sexual harassment. Repeatedly asking a person for sexual interest, asking personal questions about sexual preferences, telling lies and spreading rumors about you and somebody's sex life. And then there are nonverbals, something we call the elevator eye, looking at you up and down like that. That's the elevator eye. All right, staring at somebody as if you're in love with this person, blocking a person's path, following a person, giving personal gifts, displaying sexually explicit visuals, making sexual gesture. So I'm going to pause and invite our guest speaker for tonight. She is going to share her story, and I thank you so much. I do not see you on here. I am going to bring you to the camera now. So tonight we have a special guest who is going to share her journey of healing and her story with us. Hi, Kimba. How are you?
Hi. Hi, I'm good.
Thank you so
I
much.
I swiped the comments so I can't see. So any questions you can just tell me.
Thank
Okay.
you very much. Guys, for our guest tonight, we have Miss Kimba Bob who is joining us and she will share her story with us. I thank you so very much for coming on tonight to share your story and your journey with us. So at the end of Kimba's story, if you guys may have any questions for her, please direct it to her and myself. So Kimba, share with me your journey through healing, where you are now. Give me a little history about your story, how it started, what happened.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have to say that this is my story, my truth,
Mhm.
and no one can tell my story the way I can tell it.
That's right.
And I had to learn that through therapy.
Yeah.
So, um, I was about 14 when I met this friend.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the islands, boyfriend and girlfriend, but just not like boyfriend and girlfriend is today. Just hold hands, boyfriend and girlfriend, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we did everything together pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
you know, minus being intimate. And I know my grandmother never really wanted anybody in the house, so I snuck him inside
Mm-hmm.
just for company, nothing, just to have company. I was
Mm-hmm.
babysitting and he forced himself on me,
Mm-hmm.
taking my virginity. And
Mm-hmm. I'm so
after
sorry.
being around him for so many years,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think anyone would believe me
Mm-hmm.
because we were always together. Everybody thought everything was going on, but it really wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I shut down. as far as I thought I had put it to rest because it was my fault. I shouldn't have him in the house, first of all. And my grandmother always used to say, obedience is better than sacrifice. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of deserved that because it was the the right it wasn't the right thing that I was supposed to do. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I thought.
Victim blaming, yeah. Self
And so
blaming.
I dismissed it. And I thought, well, I am grown now
Yeah.
and I don't need to deal with that until I had my first child.
Mm.
And the birth of my child somehow mimicked everything that happened to me that night.
Wow.
And I went into a depression.
Mm.
I didn't want to see her when I
Mm.
had her. For like 4 days, I didn't see her. I didn't speak to
Wow.
anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They thought I was suicidal, but I wasn't. I was just trying to process
Mm-hmm.
what had just happened to me.
Yeah.
And I thought that when I was a teenager, I had put this thing to rest,
Mm.
but it was just so confusing, a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of everything that was going on.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most important, like, supposed to be one of the happiest times in my life, having a
Mm-hmm.
baby for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was depressed. I was
Mm-hmm.
really, really depressed. I
Mm-hmm.
was depressed and I was quiet. I didn't speak to anybody.
Mm.
So when my baby was 4 days old, the nurse said to me, "Aren't you going to see your baby?"
Mm.
And I shook my head and I didn't speak to her. I shook my head. And she said, "I don't think your baby's gonna make it. Come
Oh.
go see her.
Wow.
You know, you've been in labor for 3 days."
Yeah.
I didn't even know when I had her. I had an emergency C-section. When I woke up, they told me I had a baby. It was a lot going on.
Mm.
So I said to myself, wow, I had this baby and this baby gonna die
Mm.
because, I guess that's supposed to happen because how am I going to protect her from stuff that happened to me? A lot of stuff was going on in my crazy mind.
Yeah.
So I went upstairs to see her, and I said, I thought they said this baby was dying,
Wow.
acting like she was ready to die.
Yeah.
From the time I said hi, the
Mm-hmm.
little thing opened her eyes and was looking
Uh-uh.
at me,
Uh.
legs was moving, everything, and I was
Yeah.
like, what?
Mm.
So I thought, okay, Kimber, you need to behave.
Yeah.
Think about this baby and
Mm-hmm.
and then I put it to rest again.
Yeah. Wake up call.
And I think it was 9 years after that,
Mm-hmm.
when I was giving birth to my third child, this
Mm.
thing surfaced.
Wow.
Well, actually, I was pregnant with her and going through a lot of depression once again.
Wow.
And I spoke to my doctor and I confided in her about
Mm-hmm.
what's going on with me and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And she told me, why don't you do some counseling? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, but island people don't really do counseling,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So, but anywho, I went in and I did for the whole duration of my pregnancy. I went in, I laughed, I cried, I
Mm-hmm.
talked, I explained, and it at this point in my life now, I'm good. I
Mm-hmm.
feel good because
Thank God for that. Yeah.
thank God. I think that I have finally put it to rest.
Yeah.
Sometimes now I may get a little annoyed,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to think about how far I have come
Yes.
and
Yes.
how grateful I am for just, you know, just everything that happened.
Yeah.
Not for what had happened then, but just for the process and
Right.
for my journey, I should say. But I
Exactly.
feel comfortable today. I really do.
And you're very
And
strong and you're very brave.
thank you.
And I
And I
think,
think that had I not, I thought doing it on my own would really help,
mm-hmm.
because I was so ashamed.
Mm.
I was so ashamed because I was like, first of all, no one is going to believe me
Yeah.
because I am always hanging around boys. They're going to say that, no.
Mm-hmm.
So I, I'm good now. I'm good. I'm really good.
That's wonderful that you are in a place now where you are able to talk about it. Of course, you went through the process of counseling and you were able to, get somebody who was non-judgmental to listen to you without telling you you did something wrong or it was your fault or shaming you for what
Mhm.
happened. And you brought up a very important point, Kimba. Um, it shows how these things resurface over and over if we do not deal with it.
Mhm.
So through the time that you were depressed, did you know that the reason for your depression was due to the assault?
No,
Okay.
I didn't. I didn't make the connection because I thought I was a teenager then, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm an adult, and it couldn't be that.
Yeah.
I couldn't connect it, but it just is like me remembering what had happened
Mm-hmm.
and me trying to forget, and then having this child. Everything just was just so fresh all over again.
Yeah.
So I tried my best to deal with it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And some people maybe can, I don't know, but for me, it's something that it's buried. It's like a seed. It's buried, but it's gonna grow.
That's right.
So it, my thing was just I had to do it for me,
Yeah.
and I had to forgive
And that's
him.
that's huge. That is huge. That is
And
the
and
first
and you
step
know,
to your healing.
and that I
Yeah.
had to do that on my own, and I didn't
Yeah.
do it for him. I did it for me.
Yeah.
For me to be able to feel good and be with and that joy within me, I had
Yeah.
to forgive him for me, and
That's
I did
right.
it for me, and I feel I'm really comfortable. I could be
Mm-hmm.
around, and I'm good. So
Yeah.
I
Forgiveness.
had to learn
Mm-hmm.
to forgive. And at the time when my counselor suggested I forgive, I didn't want to hear that because I
Yeah.
was like, how are you telling me it's not my fault and you want me to forgive somebody for this kind of stuff?
Right.
It's mine. This is my body. He took something that I didn't give to him. So
Mm-hmm.
why am I responsible for forgiving him?
Mm-hmm.
And as time go by, I with um having that relationship I wanted with God,
Mm-hmm.
something was keeping me from going further. So I had to forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
And I really honestly can say that I have.
Yeah. That is so powerful that you are in this part of your journey where you have been, that burden has been lifted off of you. You no longer carry that with you anymore. I know that you did a lot of work to get to where you are. I thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight. Um, I'm sorry that that happened to you. You did not deserve it. I am sorry that you had to go through it for so many years, that you had to carry that pain within yourself. It is not your fault that it happened to you. I'm very happy that you're now in a place where you are able to look back and say, I'm whole and I'm healed now. And I'm pretty sure that your beautiful girls, you will do everything within your power to educate them about something like this in the future. And I think this is where awareness comes in, sharing our stories with each other. How can we help other victims, those who have been victimized, those who have their bodies have been defiled and they feel humiliated, they feel isolated, they feel that nobody understands them. As I explained earlier, the core of all of this intense emotions that is happening is shame, and you touched on that. You touched on shame. You know, I cannot even imagine for how many years you felt ashamed and isolated. What other feelings did you experience during the process?
I was angry for a while
Mm-hmm.
because I thought that, you know, um,
Yeah.
had I had my mom around, I thought to myself, maybe, things like that wouldn't have happened to me.
Mm.
I was angry. I was, quiet. Didn't really, wasn't my joyful self. Didn't really speak to everybody like I
Yeah.
did.
Mm-hmm.
I was just processing, trying to, deal with, okay, how can I get rid of this shame? Just
Yeah.
not say anything
Yeah.
and just be smile all over again. But sometimes you see people smiling and you don't know the pain behind that beautiful
Yes.
smile.
Yes.
It's just not everybody that smile have pain, but I'm just saying you don't know that pain sometimes when
That's
someone
right.
smiles. So, you know, I just had a lot of mixed feelings.
Yeah. You know, you bring up a very important point. We hide behind our mask, right? We leave the home, we go out, we go to church, we go to work. Nobody knows the intense pain that is inside. We are high functioning in situations where, we are suffering inside. um, the culture really does not, and when I say the culture, the African American culture, the culture surrounding sexual assault, rape, and sexual harassment, it is only recently that we now see a lot of victims are coming forward and saying this happened to me. I'm grateful for the Me Too movement because I believe that a lot of women has been empowered to come and speak up more. You also touched a little bit on, um, when your mom was not around. And I am wondering, when you had this conversation with your mom, how did she respond? What was her response to what happened to you?
I didn't tell her.
You did not. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I I didn't. I mean, I know she's gonna know eventually, but
Yeah.
I never had a discussion with her because I just didn't want to. I
Hmm.
thought that, you know, um, I didn't blame her in any way.
Hmm.
I just thought that I would burden her by telling her
Hmm. Okay.
what was going on. So I didn't say anything to her to this day, you
Yeah.
know. Um, I mentioned something to her, but indirectly. I never really sat down and told her what had happened.
Hmm.
And once I remember years ago, I tried to tell his family member what had happened, and she said that I was lying and that his penis is not big enough to hurt anybody. And, at that point, I was ready to tell, but when she said that, I just pulled back and
Wow.
I was like, well, you know, um,
I'm so sorry. Wow.
they, they're gonna, she just thought, you didn't even know me for a second. And here I am trying to say something. And it was like, so
Yeah.
that was my first time was trying to say something. So I never, I spoke to my therapist, but I never really, um, little bits and pieces, here to a friend, whatever,
Yeah.
close friendship, but never really in depth of what had happened.
Yeah. Wow, Kimba, you are very brave. And you're very strong. And I thank you so much for sharing this story with us tonight. I know that many women who are going through similar experiences will be able to view this video, and they will be encouraged by your story. They will be encouraged by your story, and they will be, maybe empowered to speak up. Um, Imagine you held on to that hurt and pain and shame for so many years, not because you wanted to, but because you did not know how to go about it. And with, like you said, you felt like you dealt with it. Sometimes we do. You know, we kind of deal with it, but then we put it in the back of our mind, our subconscious mind, and when it comes up, maybe by something that triggers it, and your trigger was the birth of your child the first time, and that was a trigger for you. And then, of course, years later, you got increasingly depressed, and that was another trigger. I have a question. I think it's for you. Let me read it. Why do you think women tend to victim shame more than men? Well, I spoke a little bit on the culture and how society pretty much when it comes to victim shaming, society for years and years and years feel shame because they are often blamed for sexually, for being assault. Um, they feel they are humiliated. If they come forward, more than likely they will say that you are seeking attention or you're trying to get this man or this person in trouble, at work, at school. So women hear these messages over and over and over. So imagine a child who was molested or who was sexually assaulted or who was touched in a way that they didn't like, came to a parent or an older adult and said, well, somebody touched me, or this guy stared at me or made passes at me. Most often we would say, what did you have on? Why did you dress that way? What did you do? Did you flirt with him? So we are usually blamed for things that men will do. So we feel ashamed. So we tend to feel ashamed more than men because society really kind of put this pressure on women when it comes to inappropriate sexual gestures. Um, as humans, we like to be in control of who we are and of our bodies and everything else. When we find that we have been dehumanized, we have been humiliated through rape, assault, it leads to shame. We feel powerless and we feel ashamed. The second question is important to it is very important to have people that you can confide in. It is true. Um, you know, Shame is a cumulative, it's a buildup of a lot of things. Again, talking about body parts, your breasts, all of these messages that we as women we hear from elementary school. We hear what makes a girl cute, what a boy would like about a girl. If she has big breasts, big butt, she's cute. Long hair, she's cute. So what happens to a girl who has a low self-esteem and doesn't have all of these things, and was assaulted with a low self-esteem? For her, she's even more embarrassed to speak about it. So Kimba, is there anything else? Anybody else have questions for Kimba? I'm going through the questions, and I hope that I'm touching on some of your questions as well. I spoke earlier about living in a rape culture. We do in fact live in a rape culture. And how do we know? Because on TV, all of the times we hear all of these sexual inappropriate comments towards women, perpetrating through the use of sexual language towards women. Things like boys will be boys, sexual explosive jokes, girls towards boys. False reports of rape is another one that people kind of raise the eyebrows whenever there's a rape reported or assault is reported. People kind of tend to think, is it true? What is true about it, or is it false? How can you get people to believe you? You cannot force anybody to believe you. First of all, your truth is your truth. As
Mm-hmm.
Kimba said, your story is your story. So if you have been sexually assaulted to the point where there was penetration, at the time, were there anybody that you could confide in? Was there anybody, or is there anybody there that maybe could take you to the hospital to get checked? Um, if it happened years ago and you are now coming forward with your story, tell your story. It behooves whoever who is listening to your story to believe. Whether they believe you or not is your story. Your journey and your healing starts when you begin to talk about it and you begin to process it and you begin to purge all of that out of your system. Your journey will begin. When you start to believe that it is not your fault, whatever happened to you was not your fault. You are not the reason why it happened. And, find a therapist, a counselor, find somebody who will be non judgmental. Of course, people that will be compassionate, people that will show you empathy, people that will be there to listen to you. You cannot force anybody to believe your story. Again, men that are also given high statuses for sexual exploits is true. Men that are in higher power. I mentioned earlier, men that are usually in bigger position. And guys, sexual harassment is really not about sex. It's about power and aggression. It is about manipulation. It's about abuse of power. Let me say that again. Sexual harassment is not really about sex. It is about aggression, power, abuse of power. Sexual harassment has become a major prevalence, and there are a lot of negative consequences. The results is devastating. It is devastating, and many people today are suffering because we do not come forward and speak about it as we should. And I encourage all of you to start having conversations, in your community, in your neighborhood. Start talking about it. If you have experienced any form of sexual assault, if you have witnessed it, if you have been a bystander, it's okay to talk about it. I share my story. I was only 7 years old, but I knew at that young age that whatever I felt, whatever that was happening, I knew that it was wrong. And yeah, he threatened to throw voodoo juju on me. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't timid, but I knew that something had to be brought up. And in fact, that young lady that spoke up, she, together with a lot of other girls in the neighborhood, spoke up too. Men goes through the same thing. It's not just women. Women are not the only ones that are sexually assaulted. you know Men as well go through sexual assault. um and so it's we know that there are 83% of women that report, compared to about 38% of men that report. So we find that women are in larger numbers than men. Now we also do know that sexual assault, sexual abuse, and rape, we know that it is the most underreported crime, again, because victims do not come forward. They are ashamed. They feel that it's their fault. They feel that nobody will believe them. They feel that there will be consequences if they do come forward. They feel that they will be blamed. They feel, they feel that, they have a low self-esteem, so maybe they deserve it. When people are inappropriately hugging you, touching you in places that they should not touch you, making sexual advances towards you, and you feel that it's okay. You feel that it's okay because maybe you have suffered abuse in the past, you have been molested in the past, you have been raped in the past, and so you are now reluctant. This sense of disbelief, this sense of shame, this intense sense of shame that plagues you to not want to even speak about it, to not want to speak about anything. So the conversation, guys, needs to happen. Both women and men are suffering in silence. They will not speak because they're ashamed of the consequences, retaliation against them. So again, making sure that we know what sexual harassment, sexual assault is. There are some resources that I want to share with you guys. I want to share with you. There's a number that I'm going to type up to put on here, but most of you know of RAINN, RAINN. You can Google them. They have a lot of resources. RAINN.org, RAINN.org. They have lots of resources. You can also call their 1-800 number, 1-800 656 HOPE, HOPE, 1-800-656-HOPE. And there are counselors that are willing to speak to you. We are hoping to have something like this in Liberia. We are working on it with Mental Care Liberia. It's an organization that is raising the awareness of mental health in Liberia. And we are hoping that we will be able to have more resources in Liberia, and when it comes to these types of assaults, these type of issues that is interrupting the lives of many day to day. I hope that tonight you guys will share the video. Make sure that you share the video. Make sure that you invite people as well. Um, you know, some tips for talking to survivors before to survivors. Make sure you tell them that you know it's not their fault. If somebody come to you and tell you that they have been sexually assaulted, they have been molested, they have been raped, make sure to tell them that it is not their fault, especially if it is a friend or family member. Guys, let them know that you believe them. I believe you. I believe your story. You don't need to hear the full story. Let them know that it is not their fault. Whatever happened to them, leave your judgment on the side. Thank you so much, Kimba. I appreciate you for sharing your story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I know you have to go, and I appreciate it. Continue to heal. Continue to empower other women of your story. So I was just given some tips about how do you talk to survivors about sexual assault. Letting them know that it took a lot of courage for them to come forward to tell their story. Let them know that you believe them. Let them know that it's not the fault. They didn't do anything to deserve it. Remind them not to blame themselves. Remind them not to blame themselves. We have a culture of blaming people because of the way that they dress, because they were flirting, they were being flirtatious, maybe because they said something inappropriately to this man or this woman. Let them know that it is not the fault. Let them know that you are sorry for what happened. Show genuine empathy. I'm truly sorry for what happened. I'm sorry that this happened to you. And this should not have happened to you. Nobody deserve it. Acknowledge that the experience that they experience has affected their life. It has affected their day-to-day livelihood. Acknowledge that maybe it has caused interruption in their life. And if they tell you that this is what's happening to them, acknowledge it. Thank them for sharing with you. Thank them for sharing with you. If somebody is talking to you about assault, it is not the time to tell them, I told you not to wear those clothes. I told you not to talk to that man. I told you not to dress like that. That is not the time to go about that. If a young person comes to divulge this information, thank them for sharing that with you. It took a lot of courage for them to come forward to tell their story. Believe their story. That's their truth. And lastly, before I leave, the conversation we started with is why victims do not come forward. What I want us to leave with is why people have been sexually assaulted, why people have been sexually molested. How can we change the narratives? How can we change the conversation? How can we get more people to be respectful of people's spaces, people's sexual spaces? When it comes to sexual harassment, how do we educate our young people on what sexual harassment is? What are some things that they should watch out for? What are some red flags that they should look out for? How do we get society to change the culture about the way that we view sex, the way that we view women's body? What are we talking about? How do you how can you tell that somebody is depressed or irritable, or the mood has changed, they have lost interest because of sexual assault? What are some things that you look for? I gave you some tips earlier. How do you talk to victims? Again, what are some questions you ask? You don't go forward to somebody and ask them if they have been raped unless they are using that language. Let them lead. Let them tell you their story. Let them tell you what has happened. And your job is to be a support. Your job is to say, I'm sorry for what happened to you. You didn't deserve that. I believe your story. Your job is to thank them for being courageous coming forward. I hope that we have this conversation more often. I know that I'm going to do many more videos on rape. Today was on sexual assault, but I look forward to doing more videos on rape, um, especially when it comes to children. What are some signs that we look for? I hope that you guys like the video. Again, share the video. I thank my guest, Kimba, for coming on and sharing her story. I hope that you guys will be encouraged, those of you that may have similar stories, to share your story. Um, do not be embarrassed. Do not be ashamed for what has happened. If in fact you are a victim, I want you to be brave enough to have the conversation. Your story may be one that may start healing for so many. Thank you guys so much. Happy Valentine's Day. I have to go out with my boo. Thank you all, guys. Thank you for tuning in. If anybody have any questions, again, I give the hotline number for RAIN. It's rain.org. Check them out. They have many resources for sexual assault victims, sexual harassment. The website is RAINN, rain.org. The number is 1-800-656-HOPE, HOPE, HOPE. Guys, remember, sexual abuse, sexual assault, rape does not only happen to women. Men also are victims. Have conversation with your boys. Have conversations with young men around you. Men too suffer from shame. Guys, it is okay to tell your story. Your abusers are counting on you not to tell. So you do them a favor and tell your story. Have a good night. Thank you for logging in. Bye bye.